Starting a business alone completely changed my life. I went from being absolutely miserable at the bottom of the corporate ladder, making minimum wage, working 40 plus hours, high-key freaking out about how I was gonna do this for 40 more years, to traveling, making bank, being able to work from the couch in the middle of the afternoon while Grey's Anatomy is on in the background, girl boss gatekeep, all of that good stuff. But while these fancy things might sound nice, they do not tell the full story at all. And no, I wouldn't trade what I have now for anything, but there's a whole lot more that I wish I had known before I had started. So in this video, let's chat about the unfiltered reality behind starting a business in your 20s by yourself. Now, this video is not meant to discourage you. It's really just meant to prepare you. I want you to have the right expectations going into it. Now I'm dividing this video up into the biggest lessons I learned going from 0 to 50K in annual revenue with my business, to going from 50 to 100K, and then all the weird lessons after 100K a year in annual revenue. We're going to chat about myths, realities, expectations for finances, timeline, and ultimately what advice I have to others either thinking about starting a business alone in your 20s or you're in the early stages of it and you want to be prepared for the horror show. Just kidding. All right, so the first huge problem that nobody told me about, and this is actually now one of my biggest pet peeves in online business and business in general, is everyone who makes business seem super, super duper easy. And they're like, you can make $10,000 in 30 days. I'll start my Etsy shop, start affiliate marketing, start passive income. You can get going with it right away. Those are all lies. Business is technically difficult. And by technically, I don't mean technically. I mean, in a technical sense, business is difficult. Business is not easy because of two reasons. One, because business is a huge umbrella term. There's a lot under the term business. You kind of have to be good at every single thing individually to make the whole thing of business work. So for example, you have to know at least a little bit about marketing. You have to know at least a little bit about sales and traffic sources. You need to know a little bit about product validation and creation, how to create a good product that people actually want to buy. You have to know a little bit about tech setups, about customer support. You have to know a little bit, or you have to be willing to put in the time to figure out all of these little small things. Otherwise, the big thing of the business is just not going to run. And because it requires, in a technical sense, a lot of different skill sets, you can only really get it through one, experience, aka making tons of mistakes, or being knee deep in Google, basically doing tons of research on your own time to try to figure it out. And that is very, very frustrating, which leads me to the second part of this problem. Do you actually want to start a business bad enough? Because business can be so frustrating, you feel like after you have to figure so many things out, it can be really frustrating to push forward when everything else seems to be pushing against you. Your ego, the mindset, all the things you don't know, the skills you need to required to actually run the business, that if you don't actually want it bad enough, or if you don't have a really good reason or a good why behind why you want to have a business, you're probably not going to stick it out in the long run. To get rich quick is not a good enough reason to run a business. If you want to get rich quick, do not start a business, because one, that's going to lead you down a really weird path, and two, you're not going to get rich quick starting a business. So here are the solutions that worked best for me. Number one, the biggest tip I have for you. If you want to start a very specific type of business, like a course business or affiliate marketing or some sort of passive income where you sell like stuff on Etsy or something, go freelance for someone who has a successful version of that business first, because then you will be paid to learn. When you see the behind the scenes, you're going to get such good context into what's actually required to run this business, and is this actually a business that you want to have and run, because it could be way more of a headache than you originally assumed. Second solution is just to double down on the learning. Have that expectation that there's going to be a big gap to fill if you've never run a business before. There are a lot of skills that you're probably going to have to Google and figure it out. Also, stop expecting overnight success. That's not real. It's never been real. Go find me one example of an overnight success of somebody who hasn't put in the work before that overnight success happened. I know sometimes we're like, oh yeah, we don't expect that overnight success, but secretly we think we're special. We think it's going to happen for us anyway. It's probably not going to happen. So don't put that expectation on yourself, because that's just going to set yourself up for failure and disappointment and all that stuff, which we don't want. Make Google your best friend. And really my biggest advice here is to be stubborn. If you truly want to build a business, you have to be extremely stubborn. You kind of have to be like this meme where you're like squaring up to all of the blockers, all of the challenges, all the problems that are going to come your way. You just have to square up and be like, I'm going to take you down. I'm going to Google. I'm going to figure it out. This is frustrating. I'm going to have a big cry, and then I'm going to come back and figure you out. That attitude is the only way you're going to get through the business side of things. Now, the next thing that I feel like nobody talks about is what I call the cold start. It's that like awkward, cringy starting phase of really trying anything where nothing is happening and you're just like, oh my gosh, this feels so uncomfortable. So again, if your only goal with business is to get rich quick, don't start a business, because it will take a while to set things up, especially if you're moving from like no momentum. You have to kind of like shove this big rock up a mountain for quite a while, not seeing any results before the rock starts to tumble on its own. And it's almost like you have to do what you don't like for at least a little while so that you can get to doing what you love doing. And a huge part of this that I feel like nobody really prepared me for is that you're going to be juggling a lot, and it's almost like you have to develop your time management skills, because most of the time you need money to pay your rent, you need to pay your bills while you're trying to start the business. So for example, when I was starting freelancing, I was still working at my corporate internship, so there was money coming in, not a lot, but there was money coming in, and in the evenings and on the weekends, I was trying to start to build my business. So I was working a lot of hours in the beginning, and that's just kind of the reality of what it takes to push through that cold start where everything's just at a standstill. It requires a lot more energy to start something, especially businesses, than to keep going once you've like gotten a few clients, gotten a few customers, you validated your product, the marketing is running, that kind of stuff. In my first year of freelancing full-time, I earned around $21,000. That's just how it is. It just took a while to get myself figured out. I had no niche, I had no clue what I was doing, so I had to experiment. I made a lot of mistakes, and then next year I made a little bit more. Next year I like doubled or tripled that, and then the next year I cracked 6 figures as a freelancer. And when I started my course business, it took me 4 months of building the course and hundreds of hours before I ever made a single dollar. That's just that cold start. It just requires a little bit of like and I wish somebody would have prepared me for that, so that's why I'm telling you now. Now, the solutions are, number one, to embrace the cringe, awkward, messy mess thing. Like, anybody who's ever done anything that's cool or admirable, they have gone through the cold start. That is what I always remind myself when I'm like, this feels really uncomfortable, I don't want to be making these TikTok videos, etc., etc., etc. Everyone cool has done the cringy, awkward part, because the cringy, awkward part is how you learn and it's how you figure things out, and then you get good later on after you've made it through. It's almost like an audition to get good at something. The next thing is getting comfortable asking for help. Ask people that know what they're doing, that have done what you've done, and also get really clear and tattoo your why on your forehead. So for freelancing, for example, my why was super strong. I felt it like down in the soul of my body. I was like, I cannot work 40 plus hours in an office in uncomfortable clothing, doing things I don't like with people I didn't choose to work with for the next 40, 50 years. Like, I cannot do that. I physically, mentally, emotionally, I cannot do that. I have to figure something else out. And that's why I started freelancing. It was such a desperate attempt to just find anything else that I could remotely do that could pay the bills enough. And when I started my course business, it was actually after something very personal happened to me. Somebody that was close to me got a little bit sick and stuff. And it just really shocked me to the point of, I was like, you know, life is just too short not to build your own business. You spent the past 3 to 4 years helping your clients build their dream businesses. Now it's time to give yourself a full go. That was my why. I wanted to share this role, this digital business management role that honestly changed my life with other people. I wanted to be able to help other people do exactly what I had done. That was my why. It was such a strong drive. The next problem is one of my absolute favorites, and I feel like nobody talks about this. When you start a business alone, shocker, you started alone. It's all on you. It's like really all on you. Like, most days is me being like, do you think this is right? Me being like, yeah, I think so, bud. It's just on you. Everything is on you. And nobody talks about that. It's like a vacuum chamber 99% of the time. You have to validate yourself a lot. In the beginning, when I started my business, I was asking for a lot of other people's opinions because I didn't trust myself and my own validation. If you depend on everybody else to give you answers for your business, you'll get too much input. Okay, you have to now suddenly start like considering everybody else's opinions. You're not really building your trust in yourself. You're not really building the confidence in yourself and like, I know what I'm doing. Like, this is my business. I have the most amount of context when it comes to my business, and I'm gonna do what I think is right, even if it's not 100% guaranteed success certainty. You know what I mean? And of course, it's on you to do everything, which is a blessing and a curse. A blessing because you get to do everything. You get to decide how you want to do everything. You can decide when you do things. You can change things around. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is an emergency unless you make it an emergency. But it's a curse because come tax season, it's on you to do that. Something's not working, it's on you to figure out, or hiring somebody else to help you figure it out. Solutions, though. I'm not just gonna leave you hanging. There are solutions. Find a mentor. Join communities on Discord, Facebook groups, masterminds. Go put in the keywords like, you know, course creators, entrepreneurs, YouTubers. I'm in a bunch of communities where I can just talk to other people who are running into the same problems as me. Find a business bestie. It took me ages to find a really good business bestie. I like really tried very hard, and now I have an amazing one and I love her. You can find an accountability buddy. Also, finding local co-working friends. This is my latest hack. for making friends is I make friends via co-working. We go co-working, we chat about what we're working on. It gets me out of the house. I get to go to a cute cafe. It's just all my favorite things. I've made a lot of great friends through co-working. I highly recommend it to you to find local co-working friends. It's just nice to get out of your bubble, honestly. And another thing that has been amazing for dealing with this loneliness thing is to make content. I didn't really think about this in that sense before, but making content like YouTube videos, making content like TikTok videos where I talk about things going on in my business, when I make IG stories, when I post on my feed on Instagram once in a blue moon, it makes me feel connected to other people. And if you are looking for a biz bestie, I actually have a private podcast that's called conveniently Dear Biz Bestie, where you can subscribe to it and I'll be your biz bestie if you would like. Yay! That was just a little not so ad. All right, the next thing within the 0 to 50K spot is what I call the overweight baggage. AKA your brain has a lot to say. It has a lot to say about everything that's going on. And most of the time, those of us that have not dealt with these mindset issues, the mindset baggage is going to be hella overweight. And if you don't actively address it, you're going to want to cry every single day, especially when it's your own business. Because when you help other people, when you are in corporate or when you're helping other people build their businesses, there's a level of emotional detachment. At least for me, when I was helping my clients, like obviously I was invested, but I was like, you know, if it fails, it doesn't say anything about me. It's just that the launch failed. So we just need to analyze what we did wrong and see what we can do better. But when it's my launch, failure means I failed. Funny how that works. Self-sabotage will come up with a million different new flavors for you to experience it. So for example, for me, I'm a huge perfectionist and I know it's secretly one of those things that's like, ooh, humble brag, but really it's really annoying when you run a business because perfectionism keeps you from taking action. If you're not taking action, nothing in your business happens. Other things, fear of failure. For me, fear of failure is a huge problem that I've really had to work on. I've really had to redefine what failure truly means to me. And now I just think of failing as when I stop trying my best. So if I just keep trying my best, I cannot possibly fail. So I have got some solutions, magic solutions for you here. Number one is to detach emotionally from your business as much as you can. You can watch the roller coaster. Don't ride the roller coaster. If you ride the roller coaster, aka every good or bad thing that happens to your business means it's happening to you personally, it's going to be really, really exhausting because there is a lot in business that you just cannot control. And so as much as possible, you want to see it as a separate entity, like you, a person, your worth inherent to you. Business, separate thing. Even if it's a personal brand and it's named after you, it's a separate entity. This is something you can work on and optimize. Anything that happens here doesn't say anything about this thing. Also, don't take things so seriously. And this is coming from someone who takes everything super seriously. You didn't start a business just to hate it. You didn't start a business to take it so seriously, to put so much pressure on yourself that you absolutely hate absolutely everything you do. I'm laughing because this is so true for me. If it's not fun, what's even the point? And a good question I ask myself is, how can I make this fun? If this is not fun, how can I make it fun? Can I make a game out of it? Can I give myself rewards or treats? Can I do it with somebody else so we can suffer together? All of that good stuff. Also, go to therapy or get professional mindset help. Like, that has honestly changed my life as well. It's been so helpful to have somebody else be like, oh, I'm noticing these patterns in your thinking. What about if we switch things up like this, doing all that kind of stuff? For example, I still remember this one mindset tip that I got from a mindset coach a few years ago, and I actually just told somebody else this as well today, is she said, your brain is an incredible problem-solving machine. And so whatever problem you give it, whatever question you give it, it will try its best to solve that problem. So if you ask it, why will I fail as a business owner? Why do I suck? Why is this going to be a catastrophic mess? Your brain will be like, I got you. It's going to be horrible because you suck, because this sucks, because that sucked. You didn't do this right. You did that wrong. This is failure, blah, 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 blah. Your brain will solve that problem that you give it. But if you ask it instead, why is this business going to succeed? Why am I amazing? Why am I the perfect person to run this business? Your brain will be like, I got you. It's going to be like, you're amazing. You're so good at this. You do so much research. You're so resourceful. You Google everything. You figure things out. And another thing that has honestly changed my life as an entrepreneur is self-compassion. And I know it's one of those things where you kind of roll your eyes and you're like, okay, whatever. But I actually implemented a new rule in my business that if I wouldn't say it to my business best friend, then I don't say it to myself. So when I wake up at 10 a.m. and I start work a little bit late, and my brain starts to go, oh, you should have woken up earlier. You should feel so bad. You know, everybody else is waking up at 5 a.m. and you're waking up at 10, all that stuff. I stop that train of thought immediately and I say, I would never, ever in a million years say that to my biz bestie, Georgie. If Georgie wrote me and she was like, Dea, I got started with the days so late, I started at 10, I'd be like, good for you, you got your sleep. Like, freedom in your work schedule is exactly why you started this business. Like, even if you start an hour later, who cares, right? Like, your time is not equal to your productivity when you're running a business anymore. It's more about impact, and if you felt like the rest was what you needed, then that's what you needed. All right, now we're entering the 50 to 100K space. This is a space where you've validated your product, you've gotten customers, you know what you're doing is working, and now you're kind of freaking out like, what I'm doing is working. Oh my gosh, what? So the next thing that I feel like nobody talks about is the decision fatigue. There is so much decision fatigue when you run a business. Every single day you have to make a million decisions. What should I work on today? What should my team work on today? What should this look like? What should that look like? What's the next project to focus on? What will have the most impact? What should our goals be? And when you start hiring a team, they're going to come to you with lots of questions as well. And then there will be even more decision fatigue on your hands. All of that to say, despite what you might think, despite what I thought, there is no perfect step-by-step blueprint to entrepreneurship. Every entrepreneur that you see out there, every business owner that you see out there is figuring it out as they go. Nobody has a secret trick, hack, method, strategy that you are not privy to. Okay, I promise. And so every single day, you just do your best. So some solutions to this. As much as possible, you want to outsource decisions if you can. Give ownership of decisions to other people so that they can make the decisions. Obviously, people you trust, people in your team. You don't want to just have everyone depend on you. Another thing that has helped me a lot is I make quarterly plans now instead of deciding every week what to work on. So every quarter I sit down, I look at absolutely everything that I could possibly do. I rank them based on impact. I like score them in a cute little Airtable. And then based on what the calculations are, I'm like, these are the next things I'm going to focus on in the quarter. And that's what I focus on. So not every day I wake up, I'm like, what should I work on today? No, my quarter is planned out, and that quarter is then broken down into months, into weeks, into tiny little tasks that I'm going to work on. And also another huge tip that I learned way too late, stop asking everyone for their opinions. Okay, everyone has an opinion, and if everyone gives you their opinion, you're going to have a million things to take into consideration, and it's really exhausting to take in that much input from everybody else. If you've made it to this stage in business, then 90% of the time your opinion will be the correct one because you have the most context to make that decision. The next one is something that I feel like people talk about, but they don't really talk about. The fact that in business, it's really like an outlasting game. You have to outlast everybody else. You have to be abnormally patient to run a business because nothing happens fast. There is no overnight success, especially when you're starting from scratch. The results often to anything you're doing, whether that's launching a new product, starting on YouTube, making content, whatever it is, the results are often super, super delayed. AKA, you're going to be doing your best and the results are not going to be there when you expect them to be. You have to wait a long, long, long time. I can only control how many times I show up, sit down, film YouTube videos, review the edits, publish the videos and all that stuff. I cannot control what happens after that. So if I measure all of my success based on output metrics that I have no control over, I'm going to feel really bad about myself, and I'm going to be riding that emotional roller coaster every single day. So solutions, be super nice to yourself. Also, boundaries are so important. You have to protect yourself if you're playing the long game. Another thing that really helps me in being patient and outlasting is, as much as possible, making things not overwhelming for myself. Break those things down into small little tiny steps, 15-minute tasks, so that it's not overwhelming for you, so that you can continue to feel that momentum. And of course, outsource, delegate, girl boss. That's really just like classic business advice. As much as possible, you want to make sure you're building a really robust team, that you're training that team, fostering that team, growing that team, hiring really good superstars, releasing ownership of those tasks to them so they can do a good job. That's the only way you're going to be able to scale, is by having that team in place. And the other thing that you'll need in place are your systems. And I call this problem the entrepreneur employee. I ran into this problem as well when I was going 50 to 100K, is I thought I was being an entrepreneur. Psych! I was actually an employee. There's this really good book called Work the System by Sam Carpenter, and he says, if your business cannot exist without you, it's not a business, you have a job. If your business depends on you, you have a job, not a business. And that is so important to hear, because I think a lot of us come from an employee mindset where we're like, okay, we're just going to do the work with a technician, we're going to do. But when you grow as an entrepreneur, as a business owner up to a certain level, it's not your job to do everything anymore. You're not meant to be the doer anymore. You're meant to be the visionary, the big picture person, the person that's like laying the foundation, the path for everyone else on your team to then execute to where we want to go. Because if no one is driving the ship, I don't know what happens if no one drives the ship. you might crash. So some solutions here. Making systems and optimizing those systems will be one of the biggest tasks that you can do to set yourself up for success to scale past 6 figures at this stage. One exercise I always ask myself, and I ask my clients when I work with them for systems, is how would you design this business if you didn't exist? Who would you need to hire? Who would you need to train? What would they have to do to completely replace you? You want to get to the point where you have a business that can run without you, and then you can just pick whatever you want to do within that business. And another thing is try not to be so precious. And I have run into this problem a lot. And I also talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who are like this, who are like, no, nobody else could do it. Only I can do that. Like nobody else, no, that's not true. Okay. Like you can train most people to do most things. And now you've made it to 100K in annual revenue. There are a lot of truths here that I wish somebody would have told me. So for one, there is a lot of pressure. Feeling like you have to maintain everything can be really exhausting. So once I hit 6 figures, for example, in my course business, I was like, okay, now what? Like, I just have to keep hitting 6 figures. Otherwise I'm getting worse. Otherwise it means something. It means I'm getting worse. It means my business is failing, blah, 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 blah. You also might have created a monster business that you hate at this stage, where you just started taking on all kinds of clients, all kinds of customers, building a ton of products, building a ton of systems, or maybe you have no systems. And you might be looking at this business being like, what is this horrible Frankenstein monster? Like, I don't like it. I hate it. And I feel like that's why you also hear of a lot of business owners quitting or just vanishing after their businesses have reached really, really good success. So I think it's really important to keep an eye on that. And also the what now question, which is a tricky one. I also ran into that in my first year because I kind of felt like I had achieved everything I wanted to achieve, which is such a dumb thing to be freaked out by, because I feel like most people are like, just be happy about that. It's like, yeah, you're happy about it, but then you're like, what now? Kind of like an existential crisis kind of situation. So some solutions I have for you here. Always keep savings in your business so you don't feel too much financial pressure if something doesn't do well, or if something doesn't do as well as last time. Again, release the pressure of being responsible for absolutely everything. You can only do your best. You cannot control everything in a business. One thing that my business mentor told me that really helped me was, she said, even if this business fails, the business is not the X factor. You're the X factor. You're just going to start a new business. And I think that really helped me be like, okay, not everything is riding on this business. Everything's just riding on me, and I'll make whatever situation happens work. Even if this business fails, I will try. Knock on wood. Even if business fails, I will make something new work. Also, stop comparing. Like, everyone says that. Stop comparing. Just stop comparing. If somebody is triggering you, that every time you see their Instagram stories, every time you see their YouTube videos, it's making you feel bad about yourself because you can tell you're comparing, just mute them. Like, don't watch their videos anymore. You don't need that. There are just some people out there that will hit too close to home for you, where you're like, I just want their business so bad. I just want their life so bad. Anytime somebody like triggers me in that sense, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love what you're doing. I love this for you. I love your success. It's just too upsetting. It's a me issue. It's not you. It's a me issue. I just can't consume your content right now. And very importantly, which again, I don't think anyone talks about, is what I call the entrepreneur rat race, where you leave the rat race and you're like, oh my gosh, I could never go back to the rat race. The corporate rat race is so dumb. And then you just end up in the entrepreneur rat race, where you're just focused solely on making more and more and more money at whatever cost. And it's like, why? There needs to be enough at some point. There need to be constraints. Where you are now might be where you 2 years ago could have never even imagined yourself going. And if you don't even take the time to be grateful now, you're never going to take the time to be grateful, even if you're making more money. So stop optimizing solely for money. Money is not the reason you're doing this. What the money is going to do for your life is the reason you're doing this, right? Travel, free time, freedom, whatever it is, whatever that looks like for you, optimize for those things instead. Do not lose sight of that, where you just end up working more and more and you lose that freedom that you even started the business for. The unprepared CEO is a problem that I ran into as well, aka the what got you here will not get you to where you actually now want to go. And there's this really good book called The E-Myth Revisited, where he talks about the concept that each business owner within them has these 3 characters that are fighting all the time: the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur. The technician is the doer. They just want to get things done. They want to check things off a list. The manager wants to organize everything, then plan everything. That's me. And the entrepreneur is the person who's the big ideas person, the visionary. And these 2 people are fighting all the time about what to do in the business. If you let the technician do all day, you're not going to have new ideas. You're not going to have planned out things, right? Systems. If you let only the manager run the show, which has been my issue in the past, you're not going to innovate because the manager wants to reduce risk. So anytime the entrepreneur's like, ooh, what about this idea? What about this new product thing? The manager inside you is going to be like, no, we're not going to doing that. This works. We're going to stick with this. But in business, innovation is required because our environment doesn't stay the same. The customer, the audience doesn't stay the same. You need to innovate to stay on trend, to stay ahead of the curve. And if you let the entrepreneur run everything, then there'll be no systems, there'll be a million things started, nothing finished. And you also really have to detach yourself from the doing the day-to-day tasks, the sitting at your laptop things, because your impact is not going to be directly related to that anymore. Your impact is going to come from time spent outside, creativity, making sure that what you're doing has the biggest ROI, biggest impact possible, potentially networking, all of those things. So it's important not to see your output in terms of hours worked as the best use of your productivity. And another quick thing, just because you can doesn't mean you should be doing it. Yes, in your business, we know you can do absolutely everything when you're a business owner, but that doesn't mean you should. And chances are, like we talked about, you shouldn't be. So solutions, good systems are everything. Shift into big picture and big vision building instead, which I wish somebody would have told me that earlier. And as much as possible, protect your energy and time because nobody else is going to do it for you. And I'll talk more about that in a second. And really develop the management skills you need to be a good manager of your team, or hire a really good business manager. And if you need a good business manager, I've got a hire a DBM page on my website where you can find trained business managers that have been trained in project team and operations management. Not really an ad, but kind of an ad for my students. And of course, the biggest thing that I wish I had known before I started a business is that when you're a business owner, you are your biggest asset. So it is extremely easy to burn yourself out as a business owner, especially if you're solely optimizing for making as much money as possible because you're just going to try to work yourself to the bone. Nobody's going to implement boundaries for you. So solutions here. Journal what your ideal work life would actually look like. What does an ideal work day look like? What does an ideal work week look like? And try to get there as much as possible and think, what do I need to do to get there? Again, stop optimizing solely for making money. I know money is super sexy and super fun, but I think it's more important to be like, what else is super fun? What am I trying to use all that money for? What's the money for? Is it to buy back your time? Is it freedom? Is it early retirement? Like, what's it for? It has to be for something, right? More time with family and friends. Then don't sacrifice those things just to make more money, right? Like, that doesn't make sense. Also, write down and enforce your boundaries. Enforce those boundaries, so important. For example, for me, I close my laptop at 5 p.m. every day. I don't open it again on the weekends. I don't open my laptops because opening my laptop triggers me to go into work mode, and I want to have an end to my work so that it doesn't just take over my entire life. Another thing, diversify your identity. Don't just make your identity your work, your business. I know it's so easy because when you start a business, it is very all-consuming because it has to kind of be all-consuming when you start it. But at some point, especially once you make like 6 figures in revenue, it's important to diversify who you are outside of that. And I think that's just generally because I'm a risk-averse person. I don't want everything to depend on one thing, because if my business closes, then who am I? I don't want that problem ever, right? So I spend a lot of time diversifying my identity. Now I have a lot of things that I do, a lot more things and interests and hobbies than just my work. And now I feel like my work is just one small part of who I am as a person, and that is amazing. So I highly recommend that to you. And of course, you do not equal your business at the end of the day. Business, separate entity, you separate here, your worth inherent, priceless, magical. Your business is just something else that you work on every single day. And if you want to see even more unfiltered truth of behind my business, here's a video where I share all of my expenses from last year, how much I spent, what I spent it on, what I regret, what I think was a good spend of money. That's queued up for you right here. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Okay, bye.